Hi everyone, and welcome to the 3 things all web professionals need to know about privacy. My name is Donata Stroing-Skilward, and I will be your guide into the world of privacy today. Before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to the organizers of this conference, not only for recognizing that privacy is a very important discussion, but also for letting me speak in pajamas. I have never been this comfortable at a conference before, so that's a really great choice that they made. Thank you so much for doing that. My goal today is to talk to you about 3 things. So, which websites need to have a privacy policy, why privacy policies are important, and why you should be the ones to talk to your clients about privacy. Before we start on the substantive portion of this talk, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm qualified to speak to you about this topic. So I'm a data privacy and technology attorney and a certified information privacy professional. I'm based in Chicago, and I've been practicing in this area for about 5 years. I'm also the president of Termageddon, which is a software solution that has helped thousands of small businesses generate their privacy policies and their terms of service. And I'm the chair of the Chicago chapter of the International Association of Privacy Professionals and the vice chair of the American Bar Association's ePrivacy Committee. I'm also an avid beekeeper. I know it's not exactly relevant to our talk today, but just like any other beekeeper that you will ever meet, I'm going to make you stare at this picture of me and my lovely bees. So if you have any questions about privacy or beekeeping, give me a shout out. I'm always happy to help on both counts. So let's start with part 1 of today's presentation, and it's what websites need to have a privacy policy. There's a lot of misconceptions about this particular topic. So some people believe that only websites that sell or share information need to have a privacy policy. Others believe that a privacy policy is necessary for e-commerce websites only, and that's simply not true. So in the first part of our discussion, we'll talk about what websites need to have a privacy policy so that you can quickly recognize whether or not you need one. So since I'm a lawyer, I had to get one definition into this presentation, but I think it's a very important one, and that's personally identifiable information, otherwise referred to as PII. And PII is any data that could identify someone. So for example, PII will include name, email, phone number, or physical address. And any website that collects PII that has a contact form collects PII. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're building a website that has a contact form, that website is collecting PII. And websites usually will collect PII via contact forms, email newsletter sign-up forms, or analytics. So those are things to keep an eye out for. If you remember nothing else from my talk today, please remember this. Any website that collects PII needs to have a privacy policy. So anytime you build a site that has a contact form, an email newsletter sign-up form, or analytics, you should know that that website needs to have a privacy policy. All right, so now we're on to part 2. Why does PII collection matter? If you look back a few years, privacy really wasn't a very big deal. You took some template or copied a competitor's privacy policy, slapped it on a website, and it never saw the light of day again. I'm sure a lot of people that have been in the web design business for 5 to 10 years will really remember this time. Then in 2018, the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, and that scandal really changed privacy for forever, I guess. That scandal exposed to consumers how easily their PII can be collected and used without their permission. And consumers quite understandably felt violated and started pressuring legislators to propose and pass privacy laws. Privacy laws regulate the collection and use of PII. So privacy laws require companies to tell consumers about their privacy practices, including what PII is collected, what is done with that PII, and who that PII is shared with. Now, to be clear, there are a lot more disclosures that these laws require. These are just the main ones. So privacy laws have a lot of additional disclosures that they require. So for example, how can consumers exercise their privacy rights, what privacy rights they have. Some laws will require you to disclose a toll-free phone number, while others require you to disclose just an email. So it really depends on what laws you need to comply with. That's what your privacy policy will say. And these required disclosures are made in the privacy policy. So the privacy policy is essentially a document that talks about your privacy practices, and it also includes all of the disclosures required by privacy laws. Now, there are quite a few privacy laws in place that regulate the collection of PII. So we have 2 in California, 1 in Nevada, 1 in Delaware, 1 in the European Union, 1 in Canada, and 1 in Australia. I won't really bore you with too many details of what these privacy laws say, but here's what you need to know. Privacy laws protect consumers and not businesses. So if your website can collect the PII of anyone from any location, if you have customers in one of these states or countries, or if you're tracking users with analytics, you may need to comply with one or more of these privacy laws. So let's take a good example. The California Online Privacy and Protection Act of 2003, also referred to as CalOPA. This law will apply to any website that collects the PII of California residents. Since consumers can submit their PII to a contact form, regardless of where they're located, CalOPA will apply to virtually every modern website. Therefore, it doesn't really matter where you are located for these privacy laws to apply to you. Same thing with the Delaware Online Privacy Protection Act that will apply to any website that collects the PII of Delaware residents. And again, that's pretty much any website, right? The General Data Protection Regulation, which is the privacy law that protects the PII of European Union consumers, can apply to businesses that are located outside of the European Union as well. So again, these privacy laws don't apply just based on where you are physically located as the business owner, as the website owner. What really matters is where you whose personal information you're collecting, where your customers reside, and who you're tracking online. So those are the things that are very important to remember. Now, remember when I said that consumers are pressuring governments to propose and pass privacy laws? Currently, there are 23 proposed privacy bills in the United States. So while all of these are different, I'd like to highlight some similarities. The chart that you see here on the slides right now is a privacy bill tracker that tracks all of the current privacy bills in the US. So all of these bills would apply outside of the states in which they're passed. So if New York passes their privacy law, you can be required to comply with that, even if you're located, for example, in Illinois. All of these bills would require certain websites to have a privacy policy that makes very specific disclosures. So this means that you might be required to have a privacy policy, and you need to make sure that that privacy policy matches up well with the disclosures that the privacy law requires you to make. All of these would impose heavy fines for noncompliance, and some of these would even allow consumers to sue businesses for noncompliance. If any of you have kept track of the Americans with Disabilities Act lawsuits that a lot of websites are being subject to, you'll know that once consumers can sue businesses directly, you see an explosion of lawsuits. So that's something that we're anticipating as well. And finally, these privacy bills will provide certain rights to consumers. So for example, the right to access the PII that you hold about them, the right to correct PII that you have about them that might be incorrect, the right to restrict processing, so you could process PII for some reasons, but not for others. So for example, you could process PII to fulfill an order, but you couldn't use it to market to that person to make further purchases. The right to opt out, so the right to opt out of the sale of their PII. Opt-in consent required, that essentially would mean that a consumer has to opt in to have their PII collected. That's a big deal in the European Union, and some states are actually proposing this as well. And the right to data portability, meaning that they can ask you to send their PII from one vendor to another, making it easier for them to switch services and other things like that. So essentially what this means is that you not only need to have a privacy policy that is compliant today, but you also need to have a strategy for keeping it up to date with the privacy laws of tomorrow. And essentially, a small business that is located in the United States could potentially be subject to 20, 30 different privacy laws if any of these bills pass, making compliance extremely difficult. So what happens if you don't comply with a privacy law? Privacy laws impose heavy fines for noncompliance, which can range from $2,500 per violation to 20 million euros or more. Now, when I say per violation, that actually means per website visitor whose privacy rights you infringed upon. So you can see that even if you have 100 website visitors per month, that can really add up to a large fine because the fine would be calculated as 2,500 times 100. So these fines are really no joke, and we have seen small businesses get fined as well as large businesses. So when it comes to the news, obviously you'll see the Googles and the Facebooks being fined for multi-million-dollar lawsuits. But if you look up GDPR enforcement tracker online, you'll see that there's a lot of smaller businesses that are being fined as well, and the fines can be pretty high, even if they infringe on the privacy rights of just one person. So you don't necessarily have to be a multi-billion-dollar company or have millions and millions of website visitors per month to be fined. We've seen small businesses being fined as well. Now, some of you may still want to roll the dice on the fines. So let me tell you a couple more reasons for caring about privacy and making sure that websites have a compliant privacy policy and making sure that consumer privacy rights are respected. So a study by Cisco found that 70% of organizations receive significant business benefits from privacy. That actually comes to significant savings when it comes to breaches. So when you invest in a privacy program, you will be probably collecting less data and storing less data, and you'll know where all of your data is located. And that will essentially mean that you will have a lower likelihood of breaches and a lower cost of a breach if a breach were to happen. A study by Amnesty International found that privacy concerns are having a major impact on people's online behavior. What that essentially means is that consumers are no longer okay using products or services that infringe on their privacy rights. So not caring about privacy and not having a privacy policy or not respecting the privacy rights of consumers can actually lead to a loss of business. And a different study by Cisco found that privacy concerns can slow down the sales cycle by an average of 7.8 weeks. And essentially what that means is that due to privacy concerns, the sales cycle is significantly slowing down. And when it comes to small businesses, that can have a really big impact on your bottom line. And, you know, the fact that you don't have a privacy policy is a pretty stupid reason to lose business. It's very easy to remedy, and it's very easy to show consumers that you care about their privacy. And make sure that your sales cycle continues its present course. And lastly, I think all of us can agree that caring about privacy and respecting the privacy rights of others is the right thing to do. And essentially what that means is that consumers can tell when their privacy is being violated. So for example, a couple months ago, I signed up to attend this conference, obviously not this one, and 2 days later, I was receiving all of these text messages and all of this marketing. And I was like, man, I know exactly where they got my data from. I know they got it from that conference. And I could tell that my PII was being sold. And honestly, that rubbed me the wrong way. And it's kind of similar going back to the Cambridge Analytica scandal. You know, consumers are upset to know that their PII has been misused or sold. Or somehow harvested, and that comes back to the business. That leads to bad PR, and really caring about privacy is it's the right thing to do. And privacy should be a fundamental human right, and we should respect that, just like we as consumers ourselves expect businesses to respect our rights as well. So now it's time to talk to you about our final topic. And that is why, as a web professional, you should be the one to talk to your clients about privacy. You might be thinking, well, what does this have to do with me? And why do I have to talk to them about this? Shouldn't they know this as a business owner? So I think it's important to discuss why you're the ones who should bring this up to them. So the fact is that clients see you as a guide to all things internet. Even if you don't want to be that guide, they usually end up seeing you as that because you're building their website, you're building their software. They think that you know a lot more about this than they do. So they may not be aware of these new privacy developments, and informing them of these privacy developments can make you look proactive and professional by showing that you're aware of industry trends. It can improve client retention and loyalty by showing that you actually care about their business and that you are more than just somebody who builds websites or builds software. You're a fully rounded business person who can provide good advice. It can help you stand above your competition if your competition is not aware of these privacy law changes, or if they're not comfortable talking to their clients about it. And it can help document the fact that you told them about this and can help protect you. Now, when it comes to telling your clients about having a privacy policy, I don't mean that you need to rattle off each privacy law and all of the ridiculous acronyms that us lawyers have come up with. It also doesn't mean that you need to go back to school and get a 4-year law degree or whatever it is. You don't need to get a certification. What you really need to tell your clients is, hey, we're building this website or we're building this software for you. And that is collecting PII. So you have a contact form, you're collecting names, emails, phone numbers, maybe you're collecting, physical addresses, stuff like that. You might be required by law to have a privacy policy. That's it. That's really all you have to say. You don't have to go into long discussions. It's just a way to bring their attention to this particular issue and making sure that they're aware of the general requirement. That's it. So with more privacy laws being passed, it becomes increasingly likely that your clients will be fined or sued for not having a privacy policy on your website. People love to blame others for their problems, unfortunately, and telling them that they need a privacy policy in writing can help you avoid trouble. So essentially, it just documents the fact that you told them. So if your client is fined or sued in the future, you can show them the documentation saying that you informed them of this requirement. Another thing that I think is very, very important for web professionals to remember is that it's your client's responsibility to make sure that they are complying with all the laws that apply to their business. However, you also need to review your contract and make sure that your contract does not put that responsibility on you. As an attorney myself, I've read quite a few agency design agreements or maintenance agreements, and it is shocking how many of them will actually say that the website designer is responsible for compliance with all laws, rules, and regulations when it comes to the website. Unfortunately, that's a very big ask, and that's a very big obligation and a very big responsibility for you. So you want to make sure that your contract is airtight, that you don't provide any warranties, that your contract doesn't say that the website will comply with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. Because if your client gets fined for something that's happening on your website, that can really put you in legal jeopardy as well. So make sure to review all of your contracts and make sure that you are protecting yourself, whether it comes to privacy compliance, accessibility compliance, or any other kind of compliance there. So I think that's very important to remember. Thank you so much for coming to my talk and listening to me talk about privacy. If you have any questions, please email me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.